Hello, Jim here. I turned 59 and a half next month, and I'll be able to actually access my different retirement accounts. I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about what I think is going to be going on with the markets from here on out. And then finally, I want to share the impact of a crash like this on someone's retirement. I'm going to share with you the impact it's having on my retirement and how I'm making a few changes now that hopefully will pay big dividends down the road. So stay tuned. I think it's going to be well worth your while. Okay, now before I jump into the key points of the video, I do want to give a quick market update. Yesterday was a really rough day in the markets. Earlier in the day, some news came out about NVIDIA and how they couldn't sell certain chips to China. And I believe that hurt almost all the chip makers. I know it hurt NVIDIA and AMD. And then later in the day, the Fed Chairman Powell made some comments sounding like he probably isn't going to cut rates anytime soon, maybe in June at the earliest. But he has a wait and see. He's not sure how to handle what's currently going on related to the tariffs. And he probably, just like the rest of us, is a bit confused with what Trump is trying to accomplish. I think maybe the insiders, Trump himself, hopefully knows what he's trying to accomplish, but he may not. I don't know. But until we get through this tariff negotiations and get a little bit of clarity, we're going to have this kind of crazy movements. I don't think we're going to hit new lows. I could be completely wrong, but I think we're going to kind of tread sideways. We may approach a new low and then bounce back up as good news comes out. But I see this continuing for a while. Now, if you're like me, I've had a lot of positions deep in the money. Some have gotten assigned to me over the last couple of days. I'm taking this time to actually look at my accounts, thinking of it as almost like an end of the year process where I'm getting rid of some stocks, I'm keeping some that are assigned, I'm selling some that are assigned, and just pretty much reorganizing my one IRA account. Most of my put trades were in one particular account. And I have gotten some margin calls, so I'm dealing with that. I'm selling some securities. I still have cash, like I have 50 or 60,000 in that account, but I still got margin calls primarily because I have a lot of cash secured puts and vertical put credit spreads. So, but I don't see it being a problem. I should be able to sell enough to kind of get that account fairly steady. Now my Roth, I didn't have many puts in, so it's doing fine. And so are my two brokerage accounts. So it's just that one account. So I have kind of learned the hard way not to do so many trades in one particular account. I got used to doing almost all my vertical put credit spreads and cash secured puts in my IRA account. So going forward, once I get through most of these assignments and then maybe even taking a few losses here and there, I'm going to look at doing more puts in other accounts and fewer within my IRA. So just wanted to share that right off the bat. Next, let's jump into the main part of the video. Now, I am making some adjustments to my primarily, again, my IRA account. I'm selling some poor performers and primarily trying to focus on really good companies that I think that could potentially grow really well. I also had a mutual fund that was based on the SPY or the S&P 500 that I'm also liquidating it to a certain degree and picking up XLK, which is like QQQ, not as good as QQQ at times, but it's a lot less expensive, so it's a little bit easier to deal with. So I'm going to be investing in that more because I can sell options with the mutual fund. I could not sell options. And then I'm getting rid of some other stocks like Polaris and potentially even a little bit of Intel. And then sticking to what I think are the best of the best, like Google. I may even pick up some Amazon. I picked up a little bit of NVIDIA, 50 shares around 95. And I'm going to do a little bit more of that, kind of preparing my account for better growth down the road, especially once we are past this tariff craziness. I do think we're going to get a boost and probably a bump. And so I'm setting up my IRA. I'm not doing as much in some of my other accounts. My brokerage has done pretty well. I have a lot of Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola's been hitting new highs. I also have Procter and Gamble, a lot of blue chip companies that pay good dividends, and they've all done really well. That account, or those two accounts, are actually doing fairly well. One is, I believe, up for the last couple of days, and the other one is kind of treading, horizontally. It's not down, but it's also not up. I have companies like Cisco and Corning and some companies like that that typically have done pretty well. They haven't dropped as much as the rest of the market. So, and then I'm also going to start focusing probably on more safe wheel strategies. I found that a lot of the wheel trades that I do that I've shared in previous videos are also holding their own. And I'm finding them a little bit safer. So trading, especially if SoFi is beaten down, doing more wheel trades related to the SoFi, as well as maybe American Airlines, also Bluebird, just some steady names that have come down a bit, but not as much as technology. So I'll probably do more wheel trades. I may do one wheel trade or type of wheel trade that I've done in the past. It's been a while since I've done it. I call it my balanced wheel trade. I may start doing it more often. What that is, if you own 100 shares, and this is going to really work out well in my IRA because I'm keeping 100 shares of a lot of the stocks that are assigned to me. Then I'm going to sell a covered call on those 100 shares, so one contract. Then I'm going to sell a vertical put credit spread or a cash secured put on another contract. And I've done that in the past. I did it with Google a long time ago, and it worked out really well. So that's one thing I'm definitely looking at. I'm going to continue purchasing puts, long puts for protection. When the market does kind of bounce back, and it'll probably shoot up significantly. So I might even look at buying long calls instead of just covered calls, especially, what happens is when the market recovers, you might be selling covered calls fairly close to your cost basis, but it might shoot up right past your cost basis, and suddenly you're deep in the money on the call side. So you had issues on the put side, and now suddenly you also are having issues on the call side. So you have to be very patient. And a call spread, if you had it, and let's just give an example. Say you had an $80 stock and you sold a covered call at 85 and 95, but the stock shot up to 130. What would happen is the shares would get called away at 85, but then they'd get called back at 95. And then as it went up to higher and higher levels, you would still own those shares. So all you would miss out is on the spread side. I've talked about this in previous videos, but I'm seriously looking at doing it now. Now, the beauty in me turning 59 and a half and being ready where I can pull money out of my different accounts, my 401k I had rolled into my IRA, but I could pull from my IRA, I could pull from my Roth. If I was to pull from one or the other, I would probably pull from my Roth first, mainly because there's no tax implications. And since I'm still working, I don't want to add more income to what I'm already making. If I pulled from my IRA, that would cause my income to go up. The beauty of an IRA, though, is you can pick and choose how much you want to pull out. So say I'm making, 80,000 in my regular job where I'm consulting. If I pull 20,000 out of the IRA, I'm taxed on that 20,000, but of course it would be at the $80,000 level, meaning I'm adding 20,000 on top of my 80,000 salary. So it would be taxed at a higher tax bracket. Now, if I wait and I access that when I'm fully retired and I'm not bringing in a whole lot of income, and say I'm only making 25 or 30,000 on a yearly basis working part-time, well, it would be added to that 25 or 30,000, so it does make sense to hold off with pulling money out of an IRA. And I still have not, nothing's changed related to what I really like about trading options or selling options is you really bring in a lot of premium. I bring in on a monthly basis right around 8,000. I'm even going to do that this month, even though I'm taking some pretty big losses related to these assignments. I may do a follow-up video about that, but I'm still bringing in premium. Like I even sold a call earlier today. I brought in $300 or $400. So I'm still bringing in that same premium. I'm also still earning the dividends Because of the assignments, though, I'm not earning quite as much interest as I used to. But the dividends are always there, which is nice. And most of them are, well, quite a bit are in my IRA now that so much has been assigned. But I do get a lot of dividends from Coca-Cola and Procter and Gamble and Con Edison, which are all in my brokerage. And that's part of the beauty of dividends, especially on really good companies that grow their dividends and have healthy payout ratios. They consistently increase them. So a lot of these stocks that I purchased 10 years ago, the dividends are twice what they were back then. And that's what happens with a lot of it. So every year I get an increase on all the dividends that I'm receiving, which kind of stays in place. Now, the interest is also really nice, and it's been a major piece of what I earn. That's going to be, again, a little bit less because I don't have as much cash. But then also, I do think the Fed will probably in June do another cut. The question is, where are we at that time? If we are truly going into a recession, I could see them cut maybe 0.5% or at least 0.25%. So the interest we earn on, our banking accounts, as well as our money markets, it's going to come down quite a bit. There's a lot of people now thinking we're going to get 3 or 4 cuts. So we may be back in the 2 to 3% range with money markets. I wouldn't be surprised, which you can earn more in a dividend paying stock or a dividend paying ETF. I also like SCHD or DVY for earning some good dividends on their holdings are typically aristocrat dividend payers, similar logic where they want to find companies with low payouts that are growing their dividends. So I encourage, especially while we're going through these tough times, to look at dividend payers, look at companies like Coca-Cola, Procter and Gamble. There's a lot of lists out on the internet of the dividend aristocrats, but they're typically really good companies. I've mentioned before, and most of these follow under this scenario, that they have high return on equity, low debt, have okay growth. Usually dividend aristocrats don't have, a large amount of growth. The exceptions might be, you know, some of the technology companies like Microsoft still has pretty good growth and they pay an okay dividend, not a great dividend. Um, look at those factors. And then also look at earnings. Are they increasing earnings? Are they buying back shares? That's really important too, especially with what we're going through with this market downturn. A lot of these companies buying back more shares than they would have been able to before. Like I know PayPal buys back a lot of shares, and pretty much all the big companies do too. I believe Microsoft is, and Google and Amazon, a lot of those. So just kind of keep that in mind. The criteria changes a little bit with a dividend aristocrat type company or a dividend paying company versus a growth company. But overall, most of the factors that you look at for fundamentals should remain the same. Now, I also, for my retirement, and you'll see it in the spreadsheet that I'm going to share at the end of this video, I also take into consideration Social Security. I plan to probably take it at 67. The only reason I would take it sooner would be if I had health issues and I didn't think I would, live long enough to make it, to make sense to pick it up at 67. But right now, that would be the only exception because I want to continue to work and I'll probably, continue to do software consulting as well as being a YouTuber. So 67 to me just seems about the right age. I may even delay it longer and maybe even 70, but a lot depends on what your life expectancy looks like and how your health is. So also wanted to mention that, and I'll share more about that too. Now, I do like freelancing. I do YouTube, but I'm also a software consultant, so I work with different companies helping them software wise. So in my retirement, freelancing is part of it because I do feel like people live longer if they stay somewhat active. I mean, you can play golf, you can play tennis, you can read a lot, you can travel. All those things are good, but also keeping your mind fresh, and I think doing that through freelancing, especially if you're over 65 and you don't need, health care, it's a great way to do it. You know, even if it's just a charity and you're going to, you know, maybe a food bank, which I also like to do, or just helping in a different type of charity, I think that's also really good. But there's a lot of ways to freelance. I end up using Fiverr and I like to invest in Fiverr. Fiverr, if you have any graphic ability, it's a great way for graphic artists to make money. Also, coders, testers, almost anything you can think of, you can serve people through Fiverr. You can provide, you know, access to your services. You can create a video and like a template on what you offer, and then you can potentially make some pretty good money through companies like Fiverr. You know, there's other competition to Fiverr, but I like Fiverr the best right now because to me it seems like I've been able to pick up the best people I need at this time. Like I've used people off of Fiverr for logos, for voiceovers, for um, you know, different types of graphics, for buttons, you know, or even more complex things. I've tried it for thumbnails for my YouTube videos. I've tried it for kind of a review of my channel and how I could make it better. I actually use someone on Fiverr for that too. So if you have special skills, it's something you could look at. And I know some people are doing really well with it. So, so this video is more about the fact that I'm 59 and a half and that I can access these different accounts, which it does give you more freedom. Just knowing I can access them, I realize I have more funds than I used to have, meaning I could pull money out of my IRA, I could pull money out of my Roth. Again, not saying I'm going to do that right now, but I have that choice. Um, and then, you know, especially with the Roth, but not that I'm planning to pull it out, but like I mentioned a second ago, and I guess I'm repeating myself a little bit, it does give you kind of a peace of mind. So just knowing in 2 more weeks I'll have the ability to access those without a penalty is, you know, it kind of gives you a way of thinking about it differently or thinking about retirement differently. So, um, and then it looks like I have crash adjustments at the beginning and crash adjustments at the end. But I'll talk a little bit more in more detail. Some of the things I'm doing a little bit different this time than I've done in the past in looking at my retirement, primarily because, you know, we're going through a crash or a correction. I do think it's more of a crash, but I'll talk a little bit more about that when I go over my retirement spreadsheet. It also has my budget and how I'm looking at pulling money from different places at different times. So stay tuned. Let's jump into that next. Okay, this is the spreadsheet I use for budgeting as well as planning for retirement, how I think income will look. Now at the top, on the top left, I've got my budget. I update this probably twice a month at least. In the red are the expenses that have gone up quite a bit, or I potentially think might be able to manage, but homeowners insurance has just increased significantly. My latest policy was right around 1800. It might have been like 1810 or something like that. Real estate tax is every year gone up significantly. I believe believe I paid 2900 when I first bought this house about 5 6 years ago, and it's doubled since then, almost 5500 on a yearly basis. Everything else is slightly gone up. Gas has remained the same. Uh, Heat has also been the same. Water and sewer has been pretty much the same for a long time. Car insurance is also gone up quite a bit. Anything insurance wise seems to have just gone up significantly. At one point, I did have my son's insurance, so paid a lot more being when, you know, if you've got a teenager or a young male, 19, 20, 21, 22, their premiums are outrageous. To even drive a car, they pay more on a monthly basis with their car insurance. So pretty much everything else has stayed the same. This has gone up. My house is mostly paid for, but with the barndominium, which I plan to also post a lot more in my memberships related to the Barndo bill. We ran into some kinks, and now we're getting going again. We're looks like we'll probably have the concrete poured here within the next couple of weeks. So I share a lot of that with my membership. I need to do an updated post. Might even create a separate YouTube channel to kind of document that whole process. It's been a real learning experience. We kind of figured out ways to make mistakes and learn from them, and hopefully we have fewer mistakes going forward. But my monthly expenses are higher because we did buy 7 acres of land, and that's why it's more than it used to be. And then other things are pretty near the same. Not any big changes. I do have disability insurance, and I was going to get rid of it, but then when I got sick in February with the flu, and I mean I got quite sick, it kind of woke me up to the fact that I need to keep it. And also I've had some vision issues recently, so I'm like, well, I think I can only have it up to about 61 or 62. I believe once you get where the government or Social Security will pay for it, I think it goes away. I'll probably get a cancellation notice or some kind of a notice saying, you only have 6 months left. But I'm like, well, I might as well keep it, especially at this time with being 59 and a half. Again, most of the other expenses are the same. So I've spent about 6,500, which has gone up primarily because of what I'm spending related to the barn dough. And I'm trying to cash flow a lot of it. So far it's worked out pretty well. Now, what's unique about this spreadsheet is this on the left. I have, and this is hypothetical, but the numbers are based. So my accounts are bigger than this, but hypothetically, could you live off of 250 and have a pretty healthy retirement? And with the crash, you'd probably, if you originally started with 250, you might be sitting here at 200 versus 250. So in the taxable account, you'd have 60, and then taxable cash, you would have around 10,000, and in taxable dividends. And again, I broke this down from my current accounts and how they work. Then I also have a Fidelity IRA where 140 is what I'm using here, and then the IRA and Roth cash 58,600 between the two, and then dividends earning about 1694. And dividends have gone up quite a bit. As interest goes down, dividends go up, mainly because of, at first when I started trading in my IRA, I moved my 401k into it. And at first it was mostly cash. Now it's almost fully invested. So account total would be 250. So this is like a hypothetical. If you had only 250, and you're going to see here, potentially even less, you could probably get away with 200 or 225, which during the cash, if you started, or crash, if you started with 250, you'd probably be right around 200. So taxable interest, this is based on what I'm currently earning. Again, adjusted for 250 versus what I have. So you bring in 34 in the brokerage, mainly because my brokerages are at Schwab, my retirement accounts are at Fidelity. And unless you have it in SWVXX, you don't earn a whole lot of interest. That's why I'm mentioning 0.45%. That's the main reason I moved a lot of my retirement, or all my retirement accounts, over to Fidelity, because you earn right around 4%. At one point, it was a lot more, but with the rate cuts, it's come down quite a bit. Now you can move your money into SWVXX in Schwab, and you can earn the higher interest, but you have to move it in and out. And if you're trying to sell puts, that kind of makes it a pain. You don't have to do that with Fidelity. Now the features and functionality is better at Schwab. I do like their Thinkorswim. I also like their online portal better. It just does some things that makes it really easy to work with. So dividends, again, within the brokerage, with it only being 60,000, dividends would be less, taxable premiums. And this is where the big difference is. So, and this is based on 1% on a monthly basis, which mostly comes from covered calls and maybe a little bit of wheel trading. but that's pretty accurate. That's pretty much what I've been able to earn in my current accounts. And then Fidelity interest 202, so a bit more with the 4.15%. I think they've come down. I think it's like 0.05 now. And then Fidelity premiums, this is based on 2.5%. Again, this is what I've been able to do within my accounts. Now, not during a crash or a correction, but in a typical month. I mean, this month will probably, I might take a loss with all my assignments for the month, but over the last year, almost every month I've been able to earn pretty much the same, pretty close to this 2.5% on a monthly basis. On between my vertical put credit spreads, my cash secured puts, my covered calls, all those different trades, as well as on occasion iron condors. But with a crash, it would be lower. But this is pretty unusual. I went through 2022 and I wasn't trading as much. My goals were a lot lower. But again, I think it was only 1 or 2 months that were impacted. So overall, you know, if I look back at the past 4 years I've been trading in these accounts, it's only been about 3 or 4 months where we've had this kind of craziness with like what's going on now with the tariffs and the market in correction territory and bear territory, depending on which index you're looking at. And then Fidelity dividends, again, they're fairly consistent. This might be a little bit low, but again, it's a $250,000 account. And then I always look at potentially you could do some part-time work. That's what I do between the YouTube channel, as well as doing some software consultant. I only have one client, but he's me fairly busy, and I end up working probably 20, 30 hours a week on stuff for him. So even a minimal amount of like 1,000 a month, I almost played with the idea of when I'm sick of doing what I'm doing, maybe I'll go work at a golf course, and you can make $1,000 working probably 10, 20 hours at a golf course. And then you would get probably half off your greens fees, or you could play golf for free potentially. I did that in high school and I was able to play for free. Right now, though, I have cataracts, so I have to get the cataracts dealt with first because I'm having a really tough time tracking the ball. I almost can't play tennis because of it. And then I do like the 4% rule. So if you're not making enough, you could potentially still do the 4% rule or 2% rule or 3% rule. You could adjust it to be able to make what you need, and you might adjust it, down for time periods like this, meaning during crash times, or you might adjust it up for really prosperous times when the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ shoots through the roof. So, and you're going to have that. That's one of the caveats with the 4% rule. It doesn't necessarily have to be 4%. It could be 2% one month, 3% the next. I know a lot of people say you need to be consistent and stay with the same percent, but I don't necessarily agree. You might not need any money one month, so you don't pull anything out. But if it's there, if you need it, and I kind of look at it that way. Now, early retirement, 59 and a half, that's what I've reached that. So I'm bringing in this case, 67.53, and then my budget is 65.39. My accounts are bigger than what I'm showing here, but my retirement is probably only double what you're seeing here. I think it's 450 total. My taxable, I do have quite a bit more, but I'm spending a lot of it on the barndominium and trying to cash flow it. So this is fairly accurate. Again, I based it on what I'm able to earn with premium and with dividends and with interest, and just trying to show what it looks like with a much smaller account. So I make an extra 214 each month, and then at full retirement age of 67, I would also get my Social Security. So at that point, I wouldn't need to work a part-time job if I didn't want to. Again, I'm not sure I'll ever completely retire. My dad is actually going to be 86 in a couple of months, and he's still working. He works from home, but we have a family business, import export, that he's running it from home. But He also will go into the store over the weekend to kind of rearrange some of the. It's an antique import export, so it's fine antiques, and he'll move things around. They'll change things. They'll move. It's three levels or 3 stories, so he'll move things from the third story to the second story, and he still likes that. I worked with him for a while, but I'm not a big one on antiques. I'm not a decorating type of person. I'm more of a computer geek. So you'd have plenty of money at full retirement, almost 9,000 on a monthly basis, which this is based on inflation. So even with inflation, you still have quite a bit of money left over. This is another reason why I tell a lot of people, you know, have fun while you're still younger and you can do it. Once you get into your 70s, now he's 85, he slowed down quite a bit, but he started slowing down substantially in his mid 70s. He's actually still fairly active. He lives in a what's called Reynolds Plantation that's fairly close to me, about an hour and a half away, but they have concerts. They have a lot of stuff that I know he and his girlfriend will go to and really enjoy. So some of the things I've learned here, important notes: high mortgage and HELOC due to barn dough build. So again, I was talked about that earlier. Need to utilize cash better, borrow from business. So I need to do a better job with that. I think I've got 40 or 50,000 in my business checking account that's not earning interest. And I did learn I could put that towards one of my loans and, like pay down my HELOC. I could always, take it back out and put it back into the business. And that's something I need to do. If you have a bunch of cash sitting somewhere in a checking account, just keep that in mind. You can move money around. I looked into it and my accountant told me that's not a big deal at all. I just have to pay it back or note it in my S corp. Disability insurance ending soon. Again, I'm not sure when that'll be. It may be 62, or it may be 60. If I get a letter here soon, then I'll know a little bit more. Social Security, 2 years out of date. So yeah, even these numbers are probably low because I don't think I've updated it in about 3 years. I haven't pulled the numbers. Can pull more out until Social Security kicks in, a total of 8 years. And yeah, I don't know that I'll pull any out, but I can. I can also, that's where this 4% rule, I would kind of use that. So if I needed another 500 on a monthly basis, that may be a lot less than 4%. That might be like a 1%, but I could do it. And I would probably, if I'm earning more, meaning I'm still working quite a bit, I would first take it out of the Roth. And then when I'm not working, I would take it out of the IRA because of the taxes. I'd be in a much lower tax bracket. Um, and then delaying Social Security allows you to make more each year. What you can earn is even higher. So if you do take Social Security too early or too young, it does limit how much you can make. Now, if Trump does away with taxes on Social Security, then that may change completely. But I did find if you take Social Security at 67 versus 62, it was significant. It was like instead of being able to make two to 3,000 a month, you could make 3 to 4,000 a month, which can have a big impact. You actually spend less in retirement. And that's what I was mentioning before. Try to enjoy yourself as you're younger or while you're younger so you can do more. I still play tennis. Like I said, I need to get my eyes worked on for being able to track the ball. I want to get back into golf. I really, really like golf. I really enjoyed watching the Masters recently. It kind of made me think about, oh man, I want to get out there and play some golf. And then part-time job can have a big impact, you know, not just on your financial situation, but also your well-being, your health, interacting with people. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be where you make money. It could be a charity, it could be a food bank, it could be any number of things. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. The big difference with the crash is, again, it would be a little bit less money. And I wanted to show that you can still do quite well, even if I lowered this to 200, I would just have to probably do more part-time work. And then I probably would use the 4% rule, but I do have a bit of leeway, so it works out pretty well. So let me know what you think. What are you doing for retirement? Are you near 59 and a half? Did you spend, some of your IRA and Roth when you hit 59 and a half, or did you wait till you were much older? I'd be curious to find out. Leave a comment. I typically respond. If you want to learn more about my memberships, you can find details in the description. It's growing. I am looking at doing a price increase down the road. But, we have good discussions, fairly interactive, which is nice. So again, thanks for taking the time to watch the video, and I hope you have a wonderful Easter weekend.